Does money buy happiness? In 2010, Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman was curious about this, and he analyzed Gallup survey data and found that happiness plateaued at around $75,000 a year. Above that, more money didn't help. And that number became famous, and it shaped real decisions people made about their lives. Then in 2021, another researcher used in-the-moment mood reports instead of survey responses and found that there was no plateau. More money kept increasing happiness all the way up the scale. Neither researcher was wrong about their data, but they were drawing from very different corners of a much larger landscape of possible contexts that they could have used to study this question. Each of these cards represents one of those contexts. They're all relevant to the question of income and happiness, but they differ in that they're from different times and places, they use different methods, and so on. If we had a way to sample a bunch of these contexts at a time, we'd find out where a given finding holds and where it doesn't, and we'd make scientific progress faster. So I've been developing a methodology to do that. It's called the cross-context design. This is a research design like cross-sectional and longitudinal designs, but AI makes it newly feasible to implement because of its ability to search widely across a large space for relevant contexts and to log its full search path, including its reasons for including or excluding each data source it considers, which makes the process transparent and auditable. The way it works is the system takes the researcher's question, searches widely for public data sets where the question can be tested, conducts the analysis across those contexts, and reports each result in a standardized set of outputs. So this is the output folder for one investigation out of several dozen that I've run so far. And if we open the collection folder, we find the report the system writes detailing its search and the contexts where the research question can be tested. In this case, the question that I asked is one that behavioral scientists have been debating for decades. When a person donates their money or time, does being seen publicly doing so make them more or less likely to be generous later? And the system found 4 relevant public data sets, each measuring visibility differently: charitable crowdfunding, political donations, Wikipedia editing, and Stack Exchange forums. And a researcher who just examined one of these contexts could have published a clean, significant finding. But they wouldn't all agree. What do you think happened? Well, after data collection, the system first writes a pre-analysis plan in which it specifies the variables and the models to test. Then it runs those analyses and writes a statistical report. And the results diverged. The charitable crowdfunding and political donation contexts pointed in opposite directions, whereas the 2 that involved volunteering time showed no relationship. And this divergence tells us that in the real world, the answer depends on contextual factors, and we can use that to develop new hypotheses to test in the future. But taken alone, just one of these contexts could have seemed like compelling, potentially publishable, real-world evidence. And so this design helps us avoid that trap. And remember the income happiness plateau? Well, it wasn't wrong. It turns out that it holds, but only for the least happy people. For most people, earning more does increase happiness. And we only learned that in this case because the researchers worked together to reconcile their data. But so often, published findings never get that second look before they get picked up in the media and run with. And so the cross-context design helps us to surface those kinds of inconsistencies before we have to spend a decade waiting to notice them. So take a moment and think, what could a design like this look like in your field? Thank you.